Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to do a deep dive into some stuff I know a lot of you are really curious about: weight loss, exercise, and all those awesome health benefits.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one.
We've got some pretty interesting research articles and studies lined up,
Mm-hmm.
and even a fun little YouTube video to check out. Should be a really interesting deep dive.
Definitely. Get ready for some surprises because we're going beyond just hitting the gym and watching what you eat.
Oh, intrigued?
We're going to be exploring how this thing called the microbiome, that invisible world of bacteria living inside all of us, plays a huge role in how healthy we are.
Okay, so when you say microbiome, most people probably think about gut health, right?
Right, but it's way bigger than that.
Ew.
You've got these microbiomes all over your body, in your mouth and nose, on your skin, in your lungs even. Well, let's just say everywhere. And get this, they all work together in this super intricate way that affects everything from how well you digest your food to how strong your immune system is.
Wow, that's pretty wild. It's like we've got a whole ecosystem living right inside of us.
Exactly. And just like any ecosystem, you need balance. When one microbiome is off, it can throw your whole system out of whack.
I see.
Like, did you know there's even a connection between how healthy your mouth is and your respiratory system?
Wait, seriously? So taking good care of my teeth could actually help me breathe better?
Yeah, it's pretty cool, huh? It shows how everything's connected in our bodies.
That's fascinating.
Now, let's get to those weight loss strategies you mentioned.
Awesome.
There was this recent study that really shook things up in the whole debate about intermittent fasting versus just counting calories.
Oh, yeah, I think I heard about that one. People are always arguing about which one is better.
Right. So this study followed a big group of adults dealing with obesity for an entire year.
Wow, a whole year?
Yeah, they split them into 3 groups. One group did time-restricted eating. That's your intermittent fasting.
Okay,
Another focused on calorie restriction.
gotcha.
And the last group was the control group.
So like the standard advice.
Pretty much. Now, here's the kicker. Both the intermittent fasting group and the calorie counting group had almost the same results after those 12 months.
No way.
Yeah.
So both work just as well.
Yep, both groups lost about 4% of their starting weight.
That's really surprising. I feel like everyone's been raving about intermittent fasting lately.
They have, but it's important to note that both groups in the study had access to counseling and support from professionals.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, that probably helped them a lot no matter which method they were trying.
Makes sense. So it's not just about what you do, but also how you do it. Having that support system can really make a difference.
Definitely.
You know, this whole thing got me thinking, could when we eat actually be more important than we think?
That's a great question, and honestly, some research suggests that it totally could be. You see, our bodies run on these internal clocks called circadian rhythms. They control a bunch of stuff, like when we sleep and even our hormone production.
I've heard of those.
Well, it turns out our metabolism might actually be more efficient earlier in the day, kind of syncing up with those rhythms.
So like if I eat my meals within a certain window of time, like let's say from 8:00 a.m. to 4:00 p.m., could that actually help me lose weight more effectively?
It's possible. It's all about working with your body's natural flow instead of against it.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's worth thinking about what kind of time window works best for you and your life, your schedule and all that.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what else ties into these cool body clocks we've been talking about? Exercise.
Oh, yeah. I actually read a study about the timing of exercise in mice that I found super interesting.
Right. This study looked at how exercise affects not only our brains, but also the clocks in other parts of our bodies, like our joints and spines.
Hold on. So we have clocks all over our bodies, not just in our brains. This is getting crazy.
We do. And what's really wild is that exercising at the same time every day could actually help sync up those local clocks with the main clock in your brain.
Okay, but why is that so important? Does having a synchronized body clock mean I win some kind of style award or something?
Uh-huh. Not exactly. But when it comes to your health, it's a pretty big deal. Some studies suggest that when those clocks are out of sync, it can actually increase the risk of developing things like diabetes and heart disease.
Oh, wow. So even if I'm not training for some big marathon or anything, just sticking to a consistent workout routine could help me stay healthier overall.
Exactly. It's all about working with your body's natural rhythms, just like we were talking about with meal timing. And this goes for any kind of activity, even just taking a brisk walk.
That's awesome. I love that. So every little bit counts as long as we're consistent with it.
Exactly. And remember that study we talked about earlier with the intermittent calorie restriction? Well, it turns out it also showed some really cool stuff about how that kind of diet affects not just how much you weigh, but also your brain, Andy, your gut.
Oh, right. It wasn't just about the weight loss. They were looking at brain activity too, weren't they?
Yeah. They studied 25 people who were obese for over 2 months, and they found that this intermittent calorie restriction did lead to some pretty significant weight loss, like an average of 7.6 kilograms.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is. But here's the really fascinating part. They also saw changes in the activity of the brain regions that are linked to obesity.
So that means changing how we eat can actually change how our brains work.
It seems like it. And get this, they also found a connection between certain types of bacteria in our guts and the activity in a part of the brain that influences our willpower when it comes to food.
Wait, hold up. Are you telling me that the tiny bacteria in my gut can actually talk to my brain and influence what I choose to eat?
That's what the research is suggesting. The connection between the gut and the brain is super complex.
Definitely sounds like it.
But this study shows just how much we still have to learn about this amazing connection. I mean, just imagine what we could do if we could actually target those specific brain regions or even the gut bacteria to help people manage their weight more effectively.
That would be incredible. It's like science fiction is becoming reality right here.
I know, right? It's mind-blowing. And speaking of food, remember we were talking about breakfast earlier? We know that men and women's bodies seem to process energy differently. But what if the kind of breakfast that's best for weight loss actually depends on whether you're a man or a woman?
Now, that would be really interesting. Tell me more.
Well, researchers use some pretty fancy math models to simulate how men and women's metabolisms respond to food after they haven't eaten for a while, like after fasting. And the results were really surprising.
So what did they find? I'm dying to know.
It looks like after fasting, men's metabolisms might actually do better with breakfasts that are higher in carbs, like oatmeal or whole grain toast.
Oh, so the classic breakfast foods we always hear about.
Right. But on the other hand, women might actually benefit more from breakfasts that are higher in fat, like eggs and avocado.
Interesting. So there might not be a one-size-fits-all approach to breakfast, huh?
Exactly. And they think this could be because of something called the TGFFA cycle, which basically controls how we break down fats to use as energy. Men and women seem to use this cycle a little differently.
I see. So it's not just about counting calories or trying to pick the healthiest thing on the menu. It's about figuring out what works best for your own body.
Exactly. Pay attention to how you feel after you eat different kinds of breakfasts. Do you have more energy and feel more satisfied after a meal with more carbs or more fat? Your body will give you some clues.
I love that. It's like we can all be our own scientists.
Yeah. And a lot of us have trouble squeezing into exercise during a busy week. But I'm curious, did you get a chance to check out that study about the weekend warriors?
I did, and I found it super encouraging.
Oh, good.
So this was a huge study that looked at data from over 75,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah. They tracked how much physical activity people were getting and what their overall health was like. And the findings were pretty amazing, especially for people who tend to do most of their workouts in 1 or 2 days.
I bet. So even if I only manage to get to the gym on Saturdays and Sundays, it can still make a big difference in keeping my brain healthy as I get older?
It really seems that way. They found that weekend warriors had a much lower risk of developing some serious brain conditions, like dementia, stroke, and Parkinson's disease, compared to people who weren't very active.
Wow, that's incredible. Those are some pretty serious health problems to avoid.
They are, and it's not just about protecting our brains from those specific conditions either. The study also found that weekend warriors had a lower risk of struggling with depression and anxiety compared to people who didn't exercise much.
So it's a win-win for both our mental and physical health.
Exactly. I'm starting to think those weekend hikes I like to do are even more important than I realized.
They definitely are. It really shows you how much of an impact exercise can have on our well-being as a whole, not just our physical fitness.
I totally agree. And this is such good news for people who might feel overwhelmed by the idea of having to exercise every single day.
For sure. And the coolest part is you don't have to become some kind of super athlete to see these benefits. The study showed that getting around 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity every week, however you fit it in, was enough to make a real difference.
Yeah. So whether you're hitting the gym, going for a swim, dancing around your living room, or just going for a brisk walk, every bit counts.
Absolutely. Find something you enjoy and make it part of your life. Consistency is key.
Well said.
This whole deep dive has been packed with some amazing information. It's wild how all these different parts of our lives, our food choices, our exercise habits, even those trillions of tiny bacteria living in our guts are all connected to each other.
It really is fascinating how it all fits together, isn't it?
It is. Your body is your own.
Wow, that's so simple, yet so powerful.
It really is. Your body is unique. It's incredibly complex, and it's constantly changing. What works for one person might not work for another. So as you continue your own journey toward better health.
Be curious and be patient.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And most importantly,
Be kind to yourself.
yes, remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about making progress and finding what feels right for you.
I love that. It takes the pressure off and reminds us that it's okay to try different things and figure out what works best for us.
Absolutely. And you know what else we should talk about?
What's that?
That study about how men and women might actually benefit from different types of breakfasts for weight loss.
Oh yeah, that one was really interesting. It's not every day you hear that breakfast might not be a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Right. This study used mathematical models to simulate how men's and women's metabolisms respond to food after a period of fasting. And the results were pretty surprising. They suggested that, yeah, men and women might actually benefit from different types of breakfasts for weight loss.
So tell me again, what were those differences? I'm drawing a blank.
Sure. According to the models, it looks like men's metabolisms do better with breakfasts that are higher in carbohydrates after fasting. Things like oatmeal or whole grain toast.
So like your classic breakfast foods.
Yeah, pretty much. But for women, it seems like they might actually benefit more from breakfasts that are higher in fat, like eggs and avocado, for example.
Oh, wow. That is different. So it's not just about counting calories or trying to choose the healthiest sounding option on the menu. It's really about paying attention to what your own body needs and what makes you feel your best.
Exactly. Listen to what your body is telling you. Pay attention to how you feel after you eat different kinds of breakfasts. Do you feel more energized and satisfied after a higher carb meal or a higher fat one? Your body will give you clues.
I love that. It's like becoming your own personal scientist.
It is. And this whole deep dive has really highlighted how important personalized health is. What works for one person might not work for another, and that's perfectly okay.
I agree. We're all unique, and our bodies respond to food and exercise in different ways. Embracing that individuality is such a key part of figuring out what truly works for you.
That's a great way to put it. Well said.
Thanks. This has been such an insightful journey through the world of weight loss, exercise, and microbiome health. I feel like I've gained a whole new set of tools for approaching my own health and well-being. What about you?
Me too, definitely. So, you know how we were talking about being kind to ourselves? Well, there's this other study I wanted to mention that really shows how powerful movement can be for our health, especially as we get older.
Okay, I'm all ears. Exercise and aging. Let's hear it.
This study looked specifically at the impact of exercise on brain health. And what they found is super encouraging, especially for those of us who, maybe feel like we haven't been as active as we should have been.
Yeah, I think we've all been there at some point. So what did this study show?
Well, they looked at a ton of data from a huge group of people, and they found that the folks who exercised regularly, even if it was just on the weekends, had a way lower risk of developing dementia, stroke, and Parkinson's disease.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So even if I can only squeeze in workouts on Saturdays and Sundays, it can still make a big difference in protecting my brain as I age.
It seems that way. And it's not just about preventing those serious neurological conditions either. They also found that weekend warriors were less likely to experience depression and anxiety compared to people who weren't active.
So it's a win-win for both our physical and mental health. I'm starting to think those weekend hikes are even more important than I realized.
I think you're right. It really highlights just how much of an impact exercise can have on our well-being overall, not just our physical fitness.
Absolutely. And this is great news for anyone who might feel intimidated by the idea of having to work out every single day.
For sure. And you don't even have to be running marathons to see these benefits. The study found that getting in that recommended 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity each week, however you spread it out, was enough to make a difference.
So it doesn't matter if you're hitting the gym, going for a swim, dancing around the house, or just taking a brisk walk. It all adds up.
Exactly. Find something you enjoy and make it part of your routine. The key is to be consistent.
This whole deep dive has been packed with so much incredible information. It's amazing to see how all these things that might seem separate, like what we eat, how much we exercise, and even those trillions of tiny bacteria living inside us are actually all interconnected.
It really is fascinating how it all comes together, isn't it? It's like a beautiful tapestry of health and well-being. And that reminds me of another study we touched on earlier, the one about how men and women might actually need different types of breakfasts for weight loss.
Oh, yeah. That one was really interesting. It's not every day you hear that breakfast might not be a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
It's true. It really challenges the idea that there's one perfect breakfast out there for everyone.
Totally.
So this study, as you might remember, used these mathematical models to simulate how men and women's bodies, specifically their metabolisms, respond to food after a period of fasting. And get this, the results suggested that men and women might actually benefit from different types of breakfasts when they're trying to lose weight.
Yeah, that was pretty surprising. So remind me again, what were the differences they found? It's a little fuzzy.
Of course. So the model showed that after fasting, men's metabolisms seem to prefer breakfasts that are higher in carbohydrates. Think oatmeal, whole grain toast, that kind of stuff.
Okay, so those classic breakfast foods we always hear about.
Exactly. But on the flip side, women might actually see better results with breakfasts that are higher in fat. Things like eggs and avocado, for example.
Oh, right. So not just about calories, but what kind of calories?
Yeah. The researchers think this difference could be due to something called the TGFFA cycle, which basically controls how our bodies break down fats for energy. It seems that men and women might use this cycle a bit differently.
Ah, that makes sense. So it's not just about counting calories or trying to pick the healthiest option on the menu. It's about understanding what works best for your own individual body.
Absolutely. Your body will give you clues if you pay attention.
Yeah.
How do you feel after you eat different types of breakfasts? More energized, more satisfied. Those are hints.
Love that. We're all scientists.
We are. And this deep dive has really shown us how personalized health is so important. What works for one person may not work for another, and that's perfectly okay. We all have unique bodies that respond to food and exercise in unique ways.
Yeah, embracing those differences is a huge part of finding what truly works for you.
Couldn't agree more.